Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Vivian Tran, and I'm an admissions and recruitment manager at the UBC Sauder School of Business. And tonight we have a very special event, a UBC MBA Meet the Student event with one of our current MBA students, Adrianne Erdman. Before we get this event started, I'm going to start us off with a land acknowledgement. So I would like to acknowledge that UBC's Point Grey campus is situated on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Musqueam people. I would like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many places, near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. So thank you so much, everyone, for making the time today from wherever you are in the world. And I can already see that many continents and places all around the world are represented today. So I really appreciate you taking the time for this special event and for taking the opportunity to meet a very special member of our UBC family. So just as an introduction, Adrianne was a top applicant to the UBC MBA program. She was the recipient of the prestigious Hoegg Family Scholarship. Prior to joining the UBC MBA program, Adrianne worked as an entrepreneur and had also previously worked at KPMG as a consultant. While maintaining outstanding academic performance in the MBA program, Adrianne also competes in triathlon, having represented Team Canada in the 2019, 2020, and 2021 ITU World Triathlon Grand Finals. So again, a hearty welcome to Adrianne, who's made the time out of her super busy MBA schedule to give us a bit more insights about what it is to be a top MBA student, in the MBA program, but what it was like to apply to the program and what her experiences have been so far. Adrianne, thank you so much for joining us. There's so much about you that's amazing. So I want to give you a chance to talk and not just gush about all your accomplishments. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to your MBA journey at UBC?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm kind of in a unique position. I actually did my undergraduate degree at UBC as well. So I love UBC so much, I've come back for a second time. So when I was applying for the MBA, for me, what I was looking to do was kind of pivot my career and just open my door to more networking opportunities and just seeing what else was out there. So in my application process, when I was deciding on what school, I just may jump ahead, I guess, to some other questions, but when I was deciding what school to go to, I ended up speaking to a bunch of different people who had MBA experience, who had gone to UBC, who had gone to other schools, just to get their approach and their mindset and understanding. So one person in particular that stood out to me was a woman who did her MBA at Rotman, and it was about 10 years ago. And she ended up coming back to Vancouver, and she had told me that, in hindsight, she kind of wishes she had gone to the school in the province that she wanted to live post MBA, because she left a lot of her network behind in Toronto. So when I heard that, I thought, okay, well, my goal then is to get into the top school in Canada, and that happens to be in Vancouver, which is where I wanted to live long term. So it kind of made my decision easy for me to decide on why UBC for my MBA.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thanks for telling a little bit about your decision-making process. I get a lot of, you did a BCom degree, and we often get a lot of questions about, like, is an MBA worth it for someone from a BCom background? Can you shed a little light into that? Because that's a common question that we get. And you also did a BCom at Sauder, so you've obviously bought into the Sauder brand. Can you shed a little light into, like, what it means to do an MBA as a BCom?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, it's a great question. I've definitely had people ask me like, oh, why are you doing an MBA? I think if I thought about doing like a CPA or CFA, which are like very technical skill sets and put you in a very specific role, I think, versus for me, like, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'm curious on doing entrepreneurship again. I'm also interested in the investing side through like either private equity or venture capital, or just even working at like a tech company. And so I think because of that and just having a whole range of things that I wanted to look into, I decided that the MBA was going to be the one that opened the most doors for me. And truthfully, that's exactly what it has. Like the first few semesters, there was a fair number of, I guess, courses that were like refreshers for me. But at the same time, the profs that are teaching it are incredible. And it's a different approach than undergrad. Like undergrad is very theoretical based, versus this was like, come into class and let's discuss your prior work experience and have everyone in the class talking and learning about, people in Nigeria and how they dealt with their businesses and how that compared to India and compared to New York and things like that. So I think that the learning experience is much, much different in the MBA than it is in a BCom.
Okay, that's awesome. And we've already got some questions coming in from the audience, so they're very curious about you, obviously. Andraj has asked, hi, Adrianne, what have you learned the most about yourself through the program?
That's a good question. I think for me, I've learned that I love networking. And I always knew that I loved being with people and working with people and that I was an extrovert. But I think in the MBA, like the one thing that I've really solidified is that I just love meeting people, and having the opportunity to have 30-minute coffee chats is something that I've really taken advantage of. And I think in my class, I'm probably known for doing that. But since like applying for the MBA, I think I've had like 60 to 70 coffee chats with different people, ranging from like dragons from the Dragon's Den, for those that are in Canada, to like local venture capitalists. I actually just had a call with a venture capitalist in San Francisco an hour ago. So I think that's the big thing, is that like, for me, what I've learned is probably that I can network with people, and I can really use the student card, I guess, which is helpful with that.
That's amazing. That's quite a few coffee chats, and with some really amazing people. For those of you that are not familiar with Dragon's Den, it's kind of like the Canadian version of Shark Tank. So you meet with like basically top kind of investors, and you can like learn and get some mentorship experience from them. So that's really amazing. And keep the questions coming to the audience members. You can put them in the chat or the Q&A, and then I'll pose them to Adrianne as we go through. I have another question that just popped up here from Hussein. He's asking, why not go for an executive MBA, since it's more decision-making, planning, and strategic thinking, since you already did consultancy and are seeking an equity track?
Yeah, that's a great question. That was one I struggled with, for sure. I didn't know what to do, because when I applied for the MBA, I was still running my company. And so I knew that if I did the full-time program, that meant I would have to give that up or sell my stake. Or exit, versus if I did the full-time program, that I could probably keep working for that business. So, I mean, maybe in terms of the course load, that may be different. I'm pretty sure that our courses are quite comparable, the full-time and the part-time program. So in terms of that, you get a wide range of courses. But in terms of my decision-making for full-time versus part-time, I actually have a mentor who is now retired, but he was a prof at UBC, who I took an undergrad and then I TA'd for him. And he is also a prof for the MBA program. And so it was him that actually told me, both are great, like both full-time and part-time are great, but it really just depends what you're looking for. He said that in his experience, a lot of the part-time MBAs were looking just to like step up in their current role or in their current company, versus the ones that are doing full-time are looking to really pivot their career and change altogether. And so he said, if you can afford to leave work and have that time off, the full-time program really immerses you into that culture and into the Sauder ecosystem. And so for me, I ultimately was looking for an exit out of the company. And so going and doing my full-time MBA was a great move, and allowed me to leave amicably from the company, I would say. So I would say I also did work a little bit while starting the MBA, which I would not recommend to anyone. I was warned, I know, but I did it anyway. I would say that like ideally you want to come in and just look as the full-time program as an opportunity to really pivot your career and just really immerse yourself into that program.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Also excellent advice from someone who's obviously done it, because we tell you this all the time as recruiters, not to try to work. So now you're hearing it from someone that truly has done everything, like athlete, like top student, telling you, don't try to work through this. You really should try to immerse yourself, because it is a handful of work, and some if you want to do it properly, especially when you're making the investment to do things full time.
Yeah.
Okay, and more general question for you, Adrianne. Can you just tell us generally what's it like to be, a full-time MBA student in the UBC MBA program?
Yeah, for sure. I can kind of try and break this out succinctly. So we have 7 periods. A period, think of it as a semester. So each of the periods is 5 weeks of class, and then 1 week of exams, and then 1 week off. And so it's a really condensed program. I actually have met with MBAs from McGill and Rotman and UVic and U of A, and their programs are all different. Like, it seems like ours is really condensed. In those 5 weeks, you take anywhere from like 4 to 6 courses. So you're getting to have exposure to so many different subject areas in a very short period of time. It's really intense. But you learn so much. And then in terms of the educators and the profs, I mean, I think we're incredibly fortunate. And this is one of the reasons why Sauder was so attractive to me. But I've had profs who did their PhD at MIT, London School of Economics. I just finished a class with a prof from Stanford. So in terms of that experience, I think that we're getting the top education that you possibly could in Canada, but paying a fraction of the price as you would in the United States. So yeah, overall, I would say the program, like I said, you go through a lot of different courses. And then in terms of the courses, there's some that are like theory-based that will teach you some fundamental skills like accounting and finance, which I think are really important for everyone in business to have a comprehensive understanding. But there's also some that you get real applications. So there's a class called Tech Entrepreneurship, which I'm currently enrolled in. It's half MBAs and half science students. So I formed a group of 6 people. I've got a PhD doing physics MRI reads, 2 PhDs doing artificial intelligence, and the goal is to start a company. And we're actually pretty keen on doing that. We've done cases in class where we presented to Lululemon executives. I've also had the opportunity to take international courses through like UC Berkeley. I just finished a class 2 weeks ago from them. So yeah, I mean, it's an incredible experience. I don't know how to put it all into a few minutes, but to give you a general idea, I would say it's fast paced, it's exciting, and it's challenging.
Mm-hmm. And usually I get the feedback that there's like more going on than like you have to pick and choose what you engage with, right? There's more than you can actually possibly do even as a full-time student. So you won't run out of things to do when you're a full-time MBA student. There's
and I guess that's a good point in terms of like the full-time versus part-time. Like, I mean, I don't know how many WhatsApp channels I have, but there is always something going on. We've got like a sports club, a Whistler club. We have, I don't even know, a beer club. I actually started a running club. So we have like clubs for everything, which I think is great with like the full-time program, is that everybody is on the same boat in terms of like they are fully committed 100% to our program and to our cohort and to building those relationships with everyone in our class.
That's amazing. And I'm also like a little bit nervous about those people that have to keep up with you in a running club because you're a really fast runner.
I'm not the fastest. There are a lot faster than me, so it's good.
What?
I know.
Athletes have we been admitting? That's incredible. That's amazing. So yeah, so many activities that you can join. And of course, there's that difference of what you can absorb, right? Like in a full-time versus part-time. So that's another kind of insight there into whether you do full or part-time program. Lots of questions coming in on the chat. So let's start taking some of them. There's a question here from Megan. What experiences were you able to get out of doing a master's at UBC that you couldn't or didn't get through your undergrad?
I mean, I think that like you just need the time to have work experience. What I come in with and the value that like I bring and my classmates bring, having had at least 5 years of work experience. I mean, I felt like if I look at the undergrads, they look so young and naive in a lot of ways because they haven't had that. So I think that that's one of the big things that you get from a master's program is having people and they're international. Like everyone has unique experience. In my program, I think what's incredible about an MBA, and I was talking to someone about this, like a master's of engineering or a master's of physics, like those are people with physics backgrounds and people with engineering backgrounds. In the MBA, we have people, there's a guy who worked in the military as a pilot. We have lots of engineers of different backgrounds. We have finance professionals who are traders in New York. So you really get an incredible opportunity to connect with people of all different backgrounds. And you don't get that in a BCom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also something to be said about like just where you are in your career and this kind of like strategic injection of education, but not just education, but all the networking and all the additional learning that you get that will poise you to go through the different directions you want to take your careers. That's amazing. See here, a few more questions here. So Awalabi asks, you know, when you say the classes are so I understand when you say the classes are so condensed and you learn a lot, but how much are you able to internalize if the classes are so condensed? So like you're learning a lot at once, but then like how much are you able to like actually apply and I guess kind of use, I suppose, when you're learning so much information all at once?
Yeah, I mean, I've wondered that myself, how we remember it all. But funny enough, I think that the professors have done a really good job of triaging what is relevant and what's important, and then what's applicable in the workplace. And so they teach you the absolute most important things, and a lot of it is like frameworks or structures that you can then go and apply into your jobs. And a lot of them are coming with the perspective of like, okay, we know that you're going to have to experience this as a senior executive and as a leader later in your career. So we want to teach you those fundamental skills. So I think that they do a really good job of solidifying the knowledge, and we're also learning things that I think are relevant and that that industry is looking for. Like for example, so I have a BCom. I don't know programming, but I learned Python. And so that was something that like really challenged me. And I didn't expect to go into an MBA learning Python, but that was something that UBC identified as an important skill set for us to know and at least be able to communicate with those professionals. And so that's an example of, I think, like the coursework, and those are things that you will remember.
That's great. And then I am just asked, like, what do you enjoy most about the program?
Now that we're in person, I mean, I actually didn't mind it online, but I definitely enjoy just being in person and being able to have conversations with professors. So like for me, those relationships were not one that I necessarily prioritize in undergrad, but I see the value of what the profs bring and just like their personal experience. So I think one of my favorite things in the program is just being able to connect with those individuals. And like one of my profs, he was an entrepreneur for 14 years and then a venture capitalist for 13 years now. And being able to have like a coffee chat with him after class has been incredible. And another one of my finance profs asked, he's like, oh, if anyone wants to go for a run sometime, like I would love to. So I'm like, okay, obviously I'm going to go for a run. So like stuff like that, like those are just such great opportunities to be able to have those relationships. And so I think, yeah, probably having those relationships with profs has been one of the top highlights for me.
Yeah, we do get a lot of feedback that our profs are excellent. They are selected because of their incredible teaching records and their just track record of caring about students. So like these kind of conversations where like students tell me they go for beers with their profs or go for a run, although it's got to be a really fast prof that's going to keep up with you in a run. But just those great stories like that about the approachability of our profs is definitely one of those things that students mention as a highlight of the program. So thanks for bringing that up. Now this is a question, it's a question from Amelia, and she's asking how society in Vancouver is for an international. So Adrianne is domestic, but can you tell us maybe a little bit about the relationships international students in the program build and the community that they build within the MBA program and outside in Vancouver?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I know that like, yeah, I mean, I am a domestic student, but I do think that the international, the culture is incredible. And I think that like a lot of people, I think you would have thought maybe people would click off and have their own little groups, but that's actually not the case at all. My class is 110 students, and I think I know pretty much everyone in my class, and we all get to work with each other in different group projects. And I think that everyone is like incredibly welcoming, and even like I'm hoping to go to Argentina, where one of my classmates is from, and have the opportunity to go to like their hometowns and things like that. So I would say from an international experience, you're not alone. There's so many international students from all over the world, and it's kind of just like one big happy family, as cliche as that sounds. So I think it's an incredible place to be. And as an international student, I mean, I don't know if you've been to Vancouver, Canada, but it is absolutely stunning and one of the best places to live. So we have, skiing and hiking and the ocean, just so many incredible things in this city. And so every international student that I've talked to, it doesn't sound like they really want to leave. So I think it's a great place to live.
Yeah, and a lot of international students do choose to stay here, but it is definitely worth noting that it does become like little microcosm of the world, like in your classroom, in those 100 people, you get a microcosm of the world. And I'll also never forget a student previously she's from El Salvador. She told me this MBA program's so worth it because just from the hotel savings, because I'll have like a couch to crash on, like on every corner of the world now after the MBA program. So it's really close knit, and I'm always amazed at like just how quickly everyone gels in the program. Like people are best friends and crashing on each other's couches and helping each other like within a few weeks of the program. So it's a wonderful place to be an international student.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. A question from Shivats is asking, hey, Adrianne, I'm interested to work in venture capital post-MBA. Is the innovation entrepreneurship track the best route to get to this goal? What are some of the other resources outside of class that you benefited from to realize your goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can say that UBC, there is a huge initiative that I have seen in the entrepreneurial space. So the fact that we even have an entrepreneurial track is incredible. I'm not in a track. I've just decided I'm taking all the courses that I want to take, but I've taken a large number of those. So we have a venture capital course. We have entrepreneurial finance, which is taught by a VC. We have tech entrepreneurship, which is one that I mentioned, that's half MBAs, half science students. I'm taking one called Growing and Exiting a Venture right now. So we are learning such incredible knowledge in that space. And then on top of that, we get guest speakers who are local entrepreneurs and local venture capitalists. So I think that if you wanted to get down that path, that would be a great way of doing it. And they're really going to teach you everything that you need to know to be able to be successful in that ecosystem.
That's awesome. And Isabel also had a question, like you mentioned Python earlier. So how do you think this MBA prepares you to work in the tech industry?
Yeah, so we have a new track. Vivian, I can't remember exactly what it's called. Is it TAL?
Yeah, the Technology and Analytics Leadership track.
Yeah, so that's new to UBC as far as I know. I think my class might be the first of this track. And so yeah, in terms of like learning the tech skills, like I said, everyone will take the data and analytics course where you learn Python, but then after that, you can also go down, it's called, the TAL track, technology and analytics. And I think I haven't taken a lot of those courses. I'm actually just registered for AI commercialization for this semester. So in 5 weeks, I'll hopefully know a lot more. But I think that in terms of the tech industry, we have another class that I'm taking in January that I think is taught by the chief technology officer of a very large tech company in Vancouver. And it's a weeknight class because of his schedule, but like that's another example of how Sauder is bringing in top people to come and teach these tech courses and really prepare you to give you a leg up in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really worthwhile to mention is that, we have some of the like kind of world leaders in terms of business research. That's right at UBC Sauder, ranked like 24th in the world for research. So you're in the cutting edge of like business research, but we also like half of the instructors are brought in from industry itself. So you get a really good mix of like academic excellence in your class, but also from like industry experts themselves. And oftentimes they're not only there to like teach you these industry subjects, but like they could be a source of like referrals and opportunities, and it has happened. Like we've actually had some of our profs hire students before. So so that's something that's really unique about the program as well, is this mix of both top academic professors, but also industry leaders in the classroom. So that's great. So keep the questions coming. Adrianne, this is a question from me. What is something that you know now that you wish you knew when you were applying for the MBA program? Is it something that you know now that you wish you kind of knew before you joined the MBA?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think one thing would probably be to own your flaws and your mistakes. I think that especially like when you're applying, you're trying to like show all of your best hands and say how you're the best candidate or things like that. But I think looking back, like it was when I would have gone back and I would have identified more of the mistakes that I made in my career and in my business. And I think that and then taking those and saying what you learned from them, and then how you're going to learn even more in an MBA so that you don't make those mistakes again. One of my instructors at Profs from last semester actually said, he's like, I know you all have a resume, but do you have a resume of mistakes? And I actually do. And there was only a few others that had. And I think that was one thing, is like going back, you really want to be able to see those things and then learn from your mistakes.
That is such incredible advice. There's so much to be said about like being open and vulnerable and being honest about yourself, about what you want to learn, about what scares you. And an MBA will push your boundaries in that way. So if the more you're open to doing that, like at first, the more you're set to learn, that you don't have to eventually push yourself to realize that earlier. Like it will make you feel vulnerable, it will challenge you, but that's part of the process. So that's amazing advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Do you have any advice for prospective students?
That's a good question. I think one would probably be to maybe get a better understanding of yourself when you're applying and when you're choosing the MBA program that you want. Have a good, solid understanding of what your values are and what motivates you, and having a 5-year plan or even a 10-year plan. Those would be the kind of advice that I would give. I actually read a book before the MBA called Design Your Life, and it kind of talks about like different paths and things like that. And that was really helpful for me to have read that. But yeah, I would say have that, and kind of you don't have to know where you want to go, because I'm like graduating and I'm already halfway through my program. I still don't know what I'm going to do post MBA, but at least like knowing, your values and motivations, I think is essential.
That is absolutely true. And that's something that we look for when we're looking at applications, is someone that is kind of knows who they are and what they want to get out of the program, right? Like you don't necessarily have to know exactly where you want to go. We do look for some goal setting. So give us some idea about why you picked us, right? Like if you're interested in our entrepreneurship track, or like you're interested in working in Vancouver, you might not know exactly where, but like you have to show that you've done the research, but you also have to show that you've done that internal reflectiveness too, so that we know that you are ready, because this is a transformational journey. It's like no small feat. So you kind of have to be like, not just ready in your career, but you also kind of have to be emotionally intelligence-wise ready for what you're about to do. Otherwise, you're not going to get as much out of it as you should. So that's something we also look for in the application process. So that's excellent advice, because a lot of people, they just look at like what the test scores are and like, like what the industry and all that kind of stuff, but they haven't done that reflective piece, like that is just as important as what your test scores are, what your GPA was, and like you're kind of emotionally ready to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak, like our BCC does a lot of work on like EQ development. Can you tell us a little bit about like the work that you've done with the BCC in terms of their coaching, in terms of their emotional intelligence development?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you get assigned a BCC coach, so my coach is Mary, so shout out to her because she's amazing. And so before the MBA, you have access to them. Throughout the MBA, you're contacting them. Through your summer internship, you're talking to them. So it's kind of like, I guess, the person that you have probably one of the closest relationships with. There was a called like a careers playbook, which we were to work on before starting the MBA and then later on throughout. And so that's a great opportunity to, I think, like get that emotional intelligence and getting more like resume building and things like that. So they really do give you all of the resources. I mean, it's a bit overwhelming, I guess, how big the playbook is. But I know that it's something that we're very fortunate to have and to take advantage of those resources, because truthfully, I feel like everyone is there just to support you and help you along your journey.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to just like distinguish, we don't try to like make the journey for you, because sometimes I get questions from applicants about like, what should I do? I'm like, that's for you to figure out. Like, that's what you have to think about before you enter the program, right? Like, you at least have to be like directionally focused. Like you might not have to know exactly what it is, but you kind of have to like, eventually, whether you figure out exactly what it is before you enter the program or during the program. No one can tell you what it is you want to do. This is kind of a journey of discovery that you do yourselves. And that's what our coaches, that's what we try to do at the admissions process, but that's what the work that the coaches carry on as they move with you through your journey as an MBA student, is to help you uncover what it is that's truly fulfilling for you, what will best utilize your skills, and ultimately what's going to lead to a very fulfilling direction in terms of where you go post MBA. And it's worthwhile to mention that the support of this Career Service Center is available to you for the rest of your career. So like if you need more coaching, like throughout the course of your career, you want to pursue another shift or you want to go into another market, those services are still available to you when you're an MBA alumni as well. So like basically
that's good to know.
Mary's
that was part of your, I'm going to have Mary.
No, that was part of your graduation package. We'd be obviously super happy to have you back, but like, I think like sometimes people don't know. So I thought that was worthwhile to mention, and I'm glad you heard it here. So yeah, so we have like a whole like alumni coaching team as well. So so you basically join a family, and that's like, it's lifelong membership, which I think is well worth you know, what you pay into the program. So one of those perks as well there. We have a question here from Hussein, and I think Hussein, there he's looking at your consultancy background because he's asking a question about consultancy. So Hussein says, I am a dentist and I dived into specialized management consulting for 2 years now. How do you think the MBA program add-on in this career, what do you think of the MBA program add-on in this career pathway? Also, can you walk us through the consultancy career progression from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, those are great questions. I think for me, when I came straight out of undergrad and went into consulting, I probably didn't have as many foundations. I think that I could have benefited from the MBA. So had I stayed in consulting, I definitely would have done an MBA. I think it's something that a lot of consulting firms look for, and I would have been pushed to do that in my career anyway. In terms of our actual course load, there is a program called SCMP. And I'm not personally in it, but maybe Vivian, you can talk to that. It's a very intense consulting program that just basically prepares you for all of the interviews and cases and things like that. So I have some classmates that are in that. And then otherwise, I think like the courses and the projects that we do a ton of cases. And so you get very comfortable with that, which you'll have to do in interviews. And then we end up learning a lot of frameworks in a lot of our classes that will continue to help you in the consulting track after completing your MBA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks so much for bringing up the SCMP program, Adrianne. So Hussein, just for your information and for anybody else that's interested in strategy consulting, our program has, we run basically this 4-weekend boot camp that's called the Strategy Consulting Mentorship Program. And it basically is run by actually our alumni that work in all the consulting firms. So it's a volunteer program. They volunteer their time. They give back to Sauder this way, which is really tremendous. Some of them are flying in from like Toronto or Calgary from the weekend. So it's really, really quite something. But it's a competitive entry program. So you do have to have a 700 plus on your GMAT to get into the program. And this is not like some torture thing that we put on you. It's like because the consulting firms often ask for the GMAT score. So that's why one of the entry requirements is the 700 plus GMAT. Now, if you can pass all the case studies in the SCMP program, then you're guaranteed first round interviews with all the consulting firms. And that is really significant because basically that puts you in the top 25% of the experience hire pool. So that eliminates like 75% of your competition. So it really increases the possibility for you to land a job in the consulting sector. And then particularly with the top tier firms like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, like that's been really helpful in terms of students that want to aim for those top tier firms. So a great program. If you enter the MBA program, it's free of charge. It's extracurricular, but it is run by volunteer from our alumni that work in the consulting sector. So great question, and thanks, Adrianne, for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I think just the only thing that I would add to that is I actually was I attended a McKinsey networking event, I think a month ago, and the partner there said, like, eventually at some point in order to progress, you have to have an MBA to work at McKinsey. So if that's something that you want to think about, I was like, okay, great, I'm already doing it. But for those of you that want to get into firms like that, that's just the reality that you probably will need an MBA at some point.
Yeah. And just prepare like for like the 100-hour work weeks if you want to work for a firm like McKinsey. So definitely do your research into like what these what this type of sector looks like. But it is tremendous. Like if you want to work for a top tier firm, like you work there for a few years and you basically have your pick of where you want to go afterwards. So really tremendous there. Few more questions coming up. We have a question from Kelly who asks, what other things did you do or books did you read to prepare you for starting your MBA journey?
Ooh, I'll be honest, I was still running my company at the time and trying to figure out how to exit. So I wasn't reading a ton of stuff in advance. I like just like some general business books like the No Rules Rules of Netflix, and their culture I really enjoyed. Like I said, I read the Design Your Life book. So yeah, I guess I didn't do as much reading in that respect, but if you don't have a business background, and you're going to be taking the period 1 classes, which are like accounting, economics, statistics, I would say spend time on like Khan Academy or other resources, freshening up those skills. So Sauder's great. They give you like exactly which videos to watch and prepare you for that. But I would say for the month leading up to starting my MBA, I was full time just going through and doing all of those preparation courses.
Okay. But that's a good book kind of suggestion there. I think that's like an excellent book to read, just for general direction and for anybody else, whether you're doing an MBA or not, to really think about like direction and what's the next step.
Yeah.
Yeah. A question from Ian who's asking, in terms of opportunity, how good is Vancouver as a city to work or start your business?
I mean, I think it's a great place to be. I think that you're also close to like you're close to Asia, you're close to San Francisco, you're close to Seattle. So if you end up wanting to leave, you can. But I think that from my perspective, I think Vancouver is growing and there's a lot of opportunity. There's a big push towards like the tech scene in Vancouver. There's also a big push in terms of finance. And I know that we don't have as big of a prevalence of like venture capital or private equity, but there still are shops out here that are doing that. And then also there's a lot of focus on like climate initiatives and carbon neutral companies as well that I think is pushing big out here as well. So I think it's a great place. I don't plan on leaving BC. I mean, maybe for like 2 or 3 years, I might go somewhere afterwards. But I think for me, like I know that Vancouver is where I ultimately want to end up, and all my family's moving to BC now from Alberta, where I'm originally from. So I think it's a great place, and I think there's a lot of job opportunity here.
Yeah, and just a lot of growth as well. Like just the proximity to Silicon Valley means that a lot of those big tech firms are like opening branches in Vancouver, expanding quite like Amazon's opening like a couple big offices here. Just yeah, and yeah, so like it's just the fact that like the Canada US dollar like differential like just means overhead is cheaper here. So like on that kind of West Coast technological innovation hub of the West Coast of North America, like it is one of the cheapest places to do business, just like Canadian dollar differential and things like that. So that makes it an attractive magnet, not just for large companies, but also for smaller companies starting up as well.
Yeah, and funny enough, like in the conversation I had an hour ago with that venture capitalist in San Francisco, he ended up saying, he's like, yeah, we've invested in 2 startup companies in Canada and we're looking for more. And like a lot of VC firms that are like in the Bay Area are now looking to invest in Vancouver startups and other Canadian startups. So I think that as more money moves here, there's only going to increase the number of opportunities that is here.
Yeah, there's still a lot of room for growth in this city. It's like it's a small city, but it's got a lot of buzz geostrategically, as you mentioned, Adrianne. Like we're on the Asia Pacific Gateway, and then also on that West Coast Technological Innovation Hub. So very exciting city to be in, and of course, doesn't hurt that it's a gorgeous city and it's always ranked as one of the most beautiful places, one of the top places in the world to live by multiple rankings, United Nations, economists. Yeah. Great. Let's take a few more questions here. May is asking, Adrianne, what about UBC attracted you the most and helped you decide, this is where I want to go?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, well, the first one was, I think I kind of mentioned a bit earlier, but was the network. Like I knew that I want to live in Western Canada for long period of time. So I wanted to be here to start building that network and meet people. I think the other thing that UBC offers that's pretty incredible, so we have a program called GIE, so it's Global Immersion Experience. I think I got it right.
Yep.
And so basically what we get to do is we get to work for a couple of months, I believe, with a startup, with a company who is somewhere around the world. And then at the end of that 2 months, we actually get to go with our classmates to that city and meet the company in person and spend, I think, like a week or 2 weeks there. So in the past, the countries were like Chile, Israel, Berlin, and Shanghai. Because of COVID, we are going to be doing different cities, but I'm actually really excited. So San Francisco and San Diego are on the list, which, like, I mean, I would have ranked San Francisco above all of the other ones just because I'd like to look into that ecosystem. So that's something that's, I think, totally unique to UBC, is having the GIE. And then another thing that we have is called GNAM. And so GNAM, I don't even know what it stands for, but
Global Network of Advanced Management.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So it's like a global network week. And Sauder, from my understanding, is the only Canadian school that is in this program. And so there's, I mean, Vivian probably knows the stats, but there's a lot of different schools internationally that are in this. And we get 2 or 3 opportunities to take a 1-week class at a different host school. So Yale has a school, is in the program. Oxford is in the program. I just took a class out of Berkeley. And so you actually usually get to go to those host schools and be with those profs. And so like my Berkeley class had 4 profs. And so that's something that's like totally unique to UBC. And that was another thing that like really attracted me to this program.
Yeah, and all those things you said were correct. Adrianne, we are the only Canadian member of this, the network, and 30 schools around the world, including all those prestigious institutions that you mentioned, and also the opportunity, if you were so inclined, to do like a dual degree with Yale as well. So the network part, yeah, so it would be the UBC MBA degree with the Yale Massive Advanced Management degree. So like kind of done with the UBC format, it would be the first year to be at UBC and the next 9 months be at Yale. And you will graduate with the 2 degrees, one from UBC and one from Yale. So yeah, tremendous opportunity there if you did want that Canada-US experience. Yeah. Okay, another question here from Tejas. Are there any courses and opportunities for supply chain with AI?
I think that there are a lot. Yeah, like we took a supply chain course or operations and logistics course that everyone has to take. But then after that, there's an entire track that's also in supply chain. Maybe Vivian, do you know what it's called?
I think there's like courses throughout the different tracks that are related to it. So I believe there's a course in the technology and analytics leadership track, because that deals a lot with some like operations and like optimization. And then there might be like some courses with the products and service management track as well. Yeah.
Yeah, PSM. Yeah. So, I mean, I personally have taken more of like the finance and entrepreneurial courses, but for sure, they definitely have supply chain and the data and analytics, I think, is totally unique. And I actually, so this summer, I ended up working at a company because we do summer internships. And there was like a group of us MBAs from Rotman, McGill, U of A, and UVic. And so we would like compare, it was kind of interesting, like comparing our experiences and our MBAs. And so, yeah, I think we're one of the only schools that are learning those skill sets. And then like with that GIE program and the GNAM classes that we can take internationally, that was something that everyone was very jealous of. So
yeah, and it's really amazing. Like, I can't wait till you do it. Adrianne,
yeah,
we've been locked down for so long, but students always say, oh, it's one of the best parts of the MBA program. So I'm excited that, you know, that the world has returned kind of to normal enough so our students can actually go, not necessarily overseas, because a lot of those countries are locked down, but at least down to San Francisco, San Diego.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great. So we're coming on to the end of our time. So I do have one last question for you, Adrianne. Can you give us some of your best tips for success while being an MBA student?
Yeah, I mean, try not to work while in P1 and P2. No, I would say probably like to be successful, you have to really have good time management skills. So, you could spend 10 hours on an assignment and get a 90, or you could spend 2 hours and get an 80 or 85, but then use that other time to go and network. So I would say having time management is really important. I also think that, like, to be successful, like, just do absolutely everything and join everything that you can, and join those clubs and go into all the events and things like that. And then finally, I don't know if this is going to set me up I think it'll set me up for success, not necessarily in terms of grades, but my approach has been to take the classes that scare me the most. And so I think that in the long term, having taken those courses and being challenged will do me wonders, I hope, in my long-term career. So I would say just, stepping out of your comfort zone. And this is the opportunity to, like, fail and find out, how to challenge yourself in every way that you can. So I would say, doing all of that and putting yourself out there and being vulnerable are probably the things that I would recommend to anyone in the MBA program.
That's amazing advice. And that's exactly like what it is about, right? Like you don't take programs that are easy. They're not going to help you grow. Like if you want to be extraordinary, then you have to scare yourself, right? And you have to push your boundaries. And an MBA program is a place where you can fail safely. Obviously I'm saying this and I'm like, don't quote me if you ever, like, if you fail a course or something. That wasn't my advice. My advice is to challenge yourself, but do take courses that scare you, because that if you can get through that course, and we have a lot of academic support if you do get into that kind of trouble, like you will get through it, and then it'll just make you that much stronger. Like once you get into the workforce, fewer things will scare you. Be prepared for more things. I'll give you some examples of, like, for the internship component, for example, like the 4-month internship. Sometimes I know students that pick a totally different discipline that they might not necessarily have been interested in working in full time. They just want to explore it. And then it was a safe place for them to explore this new industry. And then they decided they hated it and like would never touch it again. But again, it was a really safe place for them to work for 4 months in an industry that they turned out, they've tried it out now and they've decided they don't like it. So that they they knew, like they didn't know about it before. It was kind of scary. Now they got to try it. So an MBA program is an opportunity to do those things that could scare you and then overcome them in a safe manner with a ton of support around you. Just make sure that you look for that support early. We have mechanisms in place to make sure that you can get success. It just means that you got to put the effort in, you got to ask for help when you need it, but you will get through it. Great. Thank you so much, Adrianne, for being with us today. This is just like, I'm going to start a general kind of question period right now. Adrianne, you're welcome to stay for a few minutes. We actually do have one last question, so sorry, I was like ending the thing, but this is a really good question though. It's about the Creative Instruction Lab. So it's from Shibatz, who's asked. He says, "I'm really excited about being part of the creative instruction kind of environment in Vancouver. Could you please share any experiences you have with the mentorship programs offered by the CDL?"
Yeah, and that's a great reminder. I didn't speak about that. So I'm not in CDL, and the only reason why I'm not is because so I guess CDL is where you get to go in and work with startups and get to help them with certain initiatives that they have, and it's like an absolutely incredible program. For me, I end up doing Tech E instead, which is where we're actually building our own company, and they overlap, so I didn't want to do both at the same time, but. CDL is something that is unique. I think it's across Canada, but UBC has an incredible focus on that. And like I've met the people that lead it, like Paul Cubbin, who's incredible, and it's kind of like the mastermind behind it in a lot of ways. So I think CDL is like an absolutely great opportunity. If you haven't had startup experience, you get to not only work with startups, but then they also have, I think they're called like residents. We'll call them residents for short, but essentially they're like industry professionals who have been successful entrepreneurs or successful engineers and worked at startup companies, and they just come in as mentors. So like even that alone, to build relationships with those people would be instrumental in getting into that space. So CDL, I think, would be an incredible opportunity for anyone that wants to go into that path.
Yeah. That's great. And like you mentioned, like there's more than one thing you can get involved with if you're like entrepreneurially oriented at UBC. Yeah, and also you find all the talent you need to build whatever you want, right? it is a world-leading institution, not just in business, but in all sorts of other disciplines, like in sciences and engineering, computer science. Like if you want to build an app, you probably find a programmer right through our UBC ecosystems. So it is basically a really incredible community that you can tap into and find the talent you need to do whatever you're interested in doing. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you everyone for your questions. I don't see any more questions for Adrianne. So we're gonna move into this optional advising session that we're gonna have. Basically any questions you have about like admissions or the program, you can ask us, you can ask me in this period of time. But just please everyone, a big round of applause for Adrianne for making the time to join us today. Thank you, Adrianne.
Thank you.
You can hear the clapping all around the world, but but it's happening. So really appreciate you joining us. So so right now I'm here to take any questions from anyone that might have any questions about the MBA program. I'm just going to put some things onto the screen here that might be of interest to you, and share a couple of links while you guys queue up any questions you might have. But one of the first links I'm going to put up on the screen is just kind of the all the general admission queries that you might have. A lot of them are answered through this link that I'm going to put into the chat box right here. And this will contain basically all the information you need to know about like anything from transcripts to like qualification for a GMAT GRE waiver. That's just right here on this link that I just sent you, and I'm just kind of scrolling down to show you what this looks like. But you can see, like, if you have questions about academic achievements, all here, how you deal with transcripts. I know some of you guys have some complicated transcript questions that you have, or how do you receive like physical transcripts, and like how you submit official documents is also in here. So do check out this webpage if you're kind of in the application process, because it contains a lot of really valuable information. And then also for those of you that are looking at getting like a GMAT or a GRE waiver, it tells you, basically gives you the criteria to self-assess whether you would meet the criteria for eligibility, as well as how to, you know, kind of apply for one, like statement of qualifications, and like, you know, like to how you actually input it in our system is not actually like a button. It's actually like you have to indicate like you're planning to write the GMAT, and the date to be written is like December 31st, 2022. That will basically trigger our system to assess for a GMAT waiver. Things, English proficiency. So do check out this webpage. I just put the link on the chat. So it's just a very valuable resource that basically will answer most of your kind of technical admission questions. See a couple questions popping up in the chat. So I'm just going to check out this. I have a question about the IELTS. So I submitted my application on October 5th as an international student. My undergrad was taught in English, so I assumed I didn't need the IELTS, but I attached the IELTS general result to my application for the sake of it. I received an email saying, okay, so this might be just a bit of like a miscommunication. If you did your undergrad, if your university, like the medium of instruction was English, so you didn't just do like a degree in English, like the medium of instruction of your entire university was in English, then the English requirement, the English testing requirement is waived. So you don't have to worry about any kind of English testing requirement. In that case, I would say send me an email. I'm just gonna put my email in the chat here so everyone can email me about anything you hear in this webinar, and be more than happy to help out with that. But that's my direct email. Please forward me that case so we can take a look more at it. It might have just been like, sometimes like we see like a general IELTS come in and we're just like, oh no, it's the academic. But in this case, it looks like you qualified for a waiver anyways. So it might have just been a bit of a miscommunication. So do send me your case directly and then we can take a look at it. Okay, another attendee has asked, the GRE requirement listed on the website state you need a minimum 155, I guess, like kind of on each side, on the verbal and the quants. Is this a hard requirement? It's not necessarily a hard requirement. It is all the kind of the guidelines that we have, like the 76% or B+ on your undergrad, or like the 650 on the GMAT as a competitive score. Like all these kind of numbers, they are baseline, they are guidelines. So if you're missing it by a few points, or something's just a little bit off and you're concerned about it, send me an email, and then we could take a look at your case on a case-by-case basis. Like for the GRE, for example, if you scored slightly under, like it was like 150 on the quants instead of the 155, which would be a bit higher, you know, like if you did an engineering physics degree and you had like exceptional grades, then that obviously makes up for the slightly lower score on the quantitative section. Or if you scored slightly lower on the verbal section, but you had excellent grades, otherwise it could be another consideration. So always check with us, like check with me. You can send me a copy of your, you know, like what your application number was, and like, you know, copy of your transcripts and resume. And then we can always have take a look at what things look like and can give you a better idea about whether, like, you know, it's probably better to rewrite, or, you know, it's off by so little that it's not a big deal. So always check with us. Those are guidelines. And, you know, they're not necessarily like, you know, if you don't make it, you're out. Like it's, you know, it could be like a confluence of different things to measure academic ability. Another question. Okay, so it's a question: if I'm a Bachelor of Arts grad with a minor in commerce, if you do not meet quite that requirement, then, you know, if you're uncertain, like, because obviously these requirements are occasionally open to interpretation. UBC, okay, so like for UBC non-STEM, like commerce degrees, so which would be like a Bachelor of Arts, it sounds like if you do have the 4 quantitative courses, so if you have like courses in statistics, mathematics, and things like that, if you have 4 kind of hard quant courses, you may actually be eligible. So if you, because there could be art students that major in mathematics, right? So they end up taking a lot of math credits. So like that's the kind of cover for that. So if you do have those quantitative courses, you probably are eligible for the waiver. So, and if you're unsure, again, just send me an email, but it depends on if you have those 4 like kind of hard quant courses, which would be something like mathematics, statistics, things like that, or, you know, finance, or something like that, then you may well be qualified for the waiver. And if you're unsure, Isabel, I recommend that you get in contact with me. A few more questions here. I do not have a B+ average in my undergrad degree, but I have a GMAT in the 700s. Can I still apply? Yes, absolutely. And Adrianne's shaking her head as well, like, yes, approval. 700 GMAT is outstanding. You know, you're the 90th plus percentile. And that's exactly one of those cases where I say these are guidelines that we show you, like in terms of the grades, in terms of the GMAT, you know, like, or vice versa, right? So if your grades are slightly lower, but you like blow the GMAT out of the water, like by scoring a 700 plus, then the grades are obviously made up for. You can basically, if you can do a GMAT in 700, it means that you can do the verbal and the quants, but you can also do it under pressure, as the test is kind of computer adaptive. So in your case, absolutely, I would encourage you to apply. You've made up for the lower grades by scoring an outstanding GMAT score. How many rounds of interviews do you have? Okay, that's a good question. So just to kind of walk everyone through the application process a little bit, basically there's just usually one interview at the end of the process. So like when you we admit on something called a rolling basis. So you'll see there's like different rounds of deadlines that I'll kind of show you on the screen here. If I can just get to my screen. There we go. Okay. So you can see that there are like different rounds of deadlines here. The first round is obviously passed. We're coming up to the second round. We kind of admit students as we go through as the dates pass, right? We don't hold all the applications for the end of each round. We kind of give admissions decision between rounds as well. But basically the process is, as soon as we receive like a complete, fully complete application, there's usually like a 3 to 4 week period when we're reviewing like documents. And then if documents are missing, then, you know, it could take longer, right? So like this is for applications that are fully complete and nothing is missing. Usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks to review the documents and verify them. And then you'll get a notification about whether you got an interview. And then once you do that interview, it's usually just one interview. After 1 to 2 weeks, you'll know whether you got into the program. So that's usually what the process looks like. It's approximately from end to end, from the time that you submit a fully complete application, about a 2-month process. A few more questions here. I'm an international student and I have close to 11 years of work experience. Does this decrease my chances for a full-time MBA? Good question. I get this a lot. We're not necessarily looking for like a cookie cutter number of years of work experience, right? We do have an average in the full-time MBA about 5 to 6 years of work experience, but that doesn't mean if you don't meet that requirement or you're not exactly in that range that you're not going to get into the program. We have a minimum cutoff of 2 years of full-time work experience that you at least have to have that. But if you have like more than like our median years of work experience, doesn't disqualify you. We're looking for people that whether they have like more than 5 years or less than 5 years of work experience that are basically ready to benefit from this program. They're emotionally ready, they've done the thinking, they're also, they have some idea about what they want to learn out of this program and what they want to benefit from, whether it is kind of like solidified in their minds or they have a couple of ideas that they like to pursue. But we're basically looking for readiness for the program. And if we look at what you tell us and we deem that, we think this person is going to be really successful from our program, they're a great match, their interests fit what we can offer, then we're not just going to offer like admission, we probably offer a scholarship as well. So like if you can prove that kind of fit and readiness for the program, then it doesn't matter what number of years of work experience you have. We're looking for people that at the end of the day will be successful from what we offer. Another question here from May. Would you tell us a little bit more about the personal statement? So there's not necessarily like a personal statement. There's a couple of application questions and we try to glean what we're hoping to get out of who you are from kind of a number of questions. Maybe Adrianne's still here, so maybe I can call on her, but can you tell us about the application process and how you went about like, the essays and things like that?
Oh, yeah, that was a while ago. Well, first of all, the one thing I was just thinking about all of this is apply early. So if the earlier you can apply, the better. And that's like, everyone in my class has said that. In terms of my remembering of the application, like I think with the essays, this kind of goes back to when I said like owning your mistakes and maybe your failures and then identifying what you've learned from them, and how you're going to continue to improve on that in the MBA, and how I think like what profs even like to know is like how your failures have helped you to where you are today. And I think that's a huge value that you can say. So like for me, I mean, I won't go into it, but there's been a lot of things that like I've learned along the way. And I think that that's something that like shows resiliency and shows that like you can get through that. So I would say that kind of stuff. In terms of, I think just like also emphasizing like why Vancouver. Like if I recall correctly, that was something that I think I was asked in the interview, like why is it that I want to be in Vancouver? So having a good understanding of that. And then as Vivian mentioned earlier, like knowing yourself, like saying why the MBA. So if a random person walked up to you on the street and said like, why are you wanting to go to UBC for your MBA? Have a solid, convincing answer. And that's exactly what I put on my application.
Yeah, and that's like so important. Like, I've been through this process many times. Sometimes candidates come to me and they're all prepared. They've got the great test score and everything, but they can't answer that question. And if you can't answer that question, if a stranger comes to you and you can't answer the question, why UBC? You got to really think why this institution. If you can't answer that, then like you really need to like step back and think why you're picking this institution. So that's actually that's a perfect example. Like, I mean, you should be able to answer.
Preparation for an interview. Yeah. I actually, in hindsight, I mean, I did a bunch of interviews with people, like networking meetings, and they asked me, why are you wanting to go to UBC? And I'm so glad that I had the chance to like answer to them before my interview. So I would say, yeah, use that as an opportunity. If you get an interview, prepare by telling other people that you don't know and try and convince them why you think why you'd be a good fit for the program as well. And what value you have. I think, that was my final point, was just that like everyone, don't downplay your success or downplay your experiences, like own what you have. I mean, even like when I was in high school, I worked as a server at a restaurant, and like that experience taught me so much and taught me about that another whole different industry. So, you don't have to like have owned and run a company or worked at McKinsey to be a good candidate. I think everyone has unique values to bring, and just don't downplay that, like own what you have and really use that and leverage that and why you bring value to the program.
Yeah, everyone can come from many different backgrounds and you all bring value from everything you learn in those positions. So, own what you have, just like Adrianne said, and like weave it into the story of what this is going to do from you going forward. But that was a solid piece of advice there, Adrianne. I never thought about it that way, but like if you can answer to a perfect stranger why you picked UBC and like answer all the associate questions around why this institution, that's a really good way to prepare. Like that's an excellent piece of advice when I think about it. So hopefully you guys take that. That's a golden piece of advice for preparing for like any kind of like MBA interview. If you can't answer that, like many people, you'd be surprised, cannot answer that. Even with the 700 GMAT, like you're not going to get into the program if you can't answer that. So like be prepared. So thanks for that. Megan has a question. I'm eligible to apply for a GMAT exemption. Is there any downside to not writing a GMAT? Would a high GMAT score help strengthen my application? Okay, that's a great question. Unless you want to go into management consulting, then there's really no, like if you meet the exemption requirements, then there's no need to write the GMAT. If you tell us you want to work in top tier management consulting, then we would say, why not write the GMAT? Because like you probably would need to write it eventually. But you need to at least show willingness to write it if you want to go into management consulting, especially if you were interested in SCMP, for example. But if you're not interested in management consulting, there is no downside like of not writing the GMAT. Like the GMAT is for us to basically determine your ability to handle an academically rigorous program. So we have some pretty strict criteria for the waiver. So if you can meet those requirements, then like we think that you're going to be fine in the program and there's no downside. Great. All right. I don't see any other open questions. So yeah, so thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. The link again for the kind of admissions and finance, I'm going to put up one more time just because it is tremendously useful. So do feel free to review those. I will be sending a follow-up email afterwards in case you had any other questions. But again, please thank Adrianne so much for coming here and for giving us her insights, like as a top MBA student, a top candidate, but also just for sharing advice that like when I'm thinking about it, like that is golden, like honestly golden pieces of advice. So I hope that you learned from this and that you're inspired by this example of one of our MBA students. And I hope that we can all keep in touch. So thanks again to everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And thanks again to Adrianne.